Okay, so imagine you're watching what you think is going to be a fairly intense but fairly standard episode of Daredevil. Born again, Fisk is grieving, Karen is spiraling, Matt is being Matt. And then, out of nowhere, the camera cuts to a little girl playing in a suburban backyard. And you're thinking, wait, whose kid is this? And then armed men kick down the door. And then a woman steps out of the shadows and starts throwing those men through walls like they're made of paper. And then you hear that music, that haunting, unmistakable Jessica Jones theme, and your entire living room just erupts. That's the energy of episode 6, Requiem. And if you've been a Marvel street-level fan since the Netflix days, since the dark hallways and whiskey-soaked offices of Alias Investigations, then this episode didn't just deliver. It delivered in a way that hit somewhere deep in the chest. Because Jessica Jones is back. Not teased. Not referenced. Not heard through someone else's phone call. Back. In the flesh. On screen. In the MCU. And it's everything. But here's the thing. And this is what makes this episode so much more interesting than just a fan service reunion. She comes back with a crack in her armor. Something is wrong with Jessica Jones. Her powers are fading. And nobody, not the show, not the characters, not even Jessica herself, seems to fully understand why. And that mystery, that is the thread that is going to pull this entire second half of the season together. So let's dig in. The episode is titled Requiem, which, if you know your Latin, is basically a funeral mass, a prayer for the dead. And that title is doing a lot of heavy lifting here because this episode is soaked in loss. Vanessa Fisk's death rippling outward, consuming everything it touches. But it's also a requiem for innocence. For the idea that these characters can keep drawing their moral lines in the sand without eventually crossing them. Karen Paige almost crosses hers tonight. And the city itself is losing something too, that fragile, barely held sense of order that was already hanging by a thread. But we'll get to all of that. Let's start where the episode starts, with Wilson Fisk and a moment so cold, so quietly devastating that it sets the entire tone of what's coming. We open the hospital. Vanessa is gone. Fisk is sitting there with that enormous, still presence he carries everywhere, and a doctor approaches to offer condolences. Normal human thing to do, right? Sympathetic gesture. And Fisk just hugs him, and keeps hugging him, and keeps hugging him, until the man is dead. No rage, no explosion, just this terrible, intimate violence that is somehow worse than anything we've seen from him before. Because this isn't Kingpin going to war. This is Wilson Fisk breaking. This is what grief looks like in a man whose entire emotional architecture was built around one person, and now that person is gone. This is where things get really interesting, because think about what Vanessa represented in Fisk's world. She wasn't just the love of his life. She was the last tether he had to anything resembling humanity. The one person who could look at Wilson Fisk and see something worth loving. And without her, the governor said it 2 weeks ago, a Fisk mayorship without Vanessa is the most dangerous version of this situation. Because now there's no leash, no anchor. He's not calculating anymore. He's grieving. And grieving men with that much power are terrifying in a way that purely rational villains never can be. Wilson Fisk is becoming something worse than the Kingpin now. He's becoming a man with nothing to lose. And the rest of his allies can feel it. You see the governor and Sheila quietly having conversations about what comes after Fisk. You see Charles, the CIA operative played brilliantly by Matthew Lillard, confronting Fisk directly and getting completely dismissed. The machine that Fisk built is starting to crack at the foundation. It's cracking not because Daredevil tore it down, but because Vanessa's death took away the one thing that gave it purpose. There's something almost Shakespearean about it. The villain's undoing coming not from his enemy, but from his own heart. But here's why her return is such a massive deal and why it matters beyond just nostalgia. Jessica Jones was canceled by Netflix in 2019, and for 5 years, fans sat with this unresolved character. A woman who had been through genuine trauma, who had fought back, who had built something fragile and real in her life, just left hanging. No ending, no closure. Just gone because of a business deal between streaming services. So when Kristen Ritter walks back into the MCU tonight, 6 years after we last saw her, it's not just exciting. It's a reckoning. It's the MCU finally saying, these characters mattered, they still matter, and we're going to treat them like they matter. And the way she's brought back is smart. Before you even see her face, you see her daughter, this little girl named Danielle, playing in a suburban backyard that feels completely wrong for Jessica Jones in the best possible way. Because Jessica Jones in a suburb with a kid and a mortgage is the universe telling you immediately that something has changed, that life has moved on in ways you didn't expect. And then the armed men show up, and the moment Jessica steps in, you feel that old electricity. She's still her, still sharp, still chaotic, still the kind of woman who solves problems by throwing them through a window. But here's the real question the episode plants right in the middle of that rooftop reunion between her and Matt. What is actually happening to her powers? Jessica tells Matt, casually but clearly shaken by it, that since having Danielle, her powers just drop out sometimes. Her super strength, her durability, they flicker. And we see exactly what she means when she goes up against Agent Powell during the warehouse raid. This guy has no powers. He's a well-trained, dangerous AVDF agent, but he's just a man. And Jessica Jones, who once stopped a moving car with her bare hands, takes a punch to the face from him that draws blood. She bleeds. And for a second, everything just stops, because that should not be possible. But okay, let's talk about what everyone is actually here for. Because this episode belongs to Jessica Jones. Here's why her return is such a massive deal and why it matters beyond just nostalgia. Jessica Jones was canceled by Netflix in 2019, and for 5 years, fans sat with this unresolved character. A woman who had been through genuine trauma, who had fought back, who had built something fragile and real in her life, just left hanging. No ending, no closure, just gone because of a business deal between streaming services. So when Kristen Ritter walks back into the MCU tonight, 6 years after we last saw her, it's not just exciting. It's a reckoning. It's the MCU finally saying, these characters mattered, they still matter, and we're going to treat them like they matter. And the way she's brought back is smart. Before you even see her face, you see her daughter, this little girl named Danielle, playing in a suburban backyard that feels completely wrong for Jessica Jones in the best possible way. Because Jessica Jones in a suburb with a kid and a mortgage is the universe telling you immediately that something has changed, that life has moved on in ways you didn't expect. And then the armed men show up, and the moment Jessica steps in, you feel that old electricity. She's still her, still sharp, still chaotic, still the kind of woman who solves problems by throwing them through a window. But here's the real question the episode plants right in the middle of that rooftop reunion between her and Matt. What is actually happening to her powers? Jessica tells Matt, casually but clearly shaken by it, that since having Danielle, her powers just drop out sometimes. Her super strength, her durability, they flicker. And we see exactly what she means when she goes up against Agent Powell during the warehouse raid. This guy has no powers. He's a well-trained, dangerous AVDF agent, but he's just a man. And Jessica Jones, who once stopped a moving car with her bare hands, takes a punch to the face from him that draws blood. She bleeds. And for a second, everything just stops, because that should not be possible. Now, the show doesn't hand you an explanation. It respects the audience enough to leave it open. But let's sit with the possibilities here, because this might be the biggest clue the season has dropped yet about where things are heading. The most grounded explanation is also the most heartbreaking. Childbirth permanently altered her physiology. Jessica got her powers through IGH experiments, genetic modification, and the long, deep changes that pregnancy makes to a human body at the cellular level may have disrupted whatever IGH did to her. Think about it. If her abilities are tied to a specific genetic expression, and pregnancy literally rewrites your body's chemistry and hormonal baseline for years afterward, it's not crazy to think that something got shifted, knocked out of alignment. This would be an almost cruelly poetic way to explore what it costs women to build a life while carrying something extraordinary inside them. But here's a theory I can't stop thinking about. What if it's not just Jessica? What if something is happening to enhanced individuals more broadly? Because Jessica drops a detail that feels almost throwaway, but absolutely isn't. She says Mr. Charles, the CIA operative, has been recruiting superpowered people. And the implication is that Luke Cage said yes. Now, Luke Cage is not a man who would sell out to the CIA unless something pushed him there. What if whatever is threatening Jessica's powers is a wider phenomenon? Some kind of field effect, some MCU-level event. And Luke went with Charles because he thought it was the only way to fix it. What if the CIA knows what's happening to enhanced individuals and is using that information as leverage? Because if you really think about it, this connects directly to what we know is coming. We know Mike Coulter's Luke Cage is confirmed for Season 3 through leaked set photos. We know Valentina Allegra de Fontaine has been building her own Avengers-adjacent team of operatives. We know Charles has ties to Val. So suddenly Jessica's flickering powers aren't just a character beat. They're a thread in a much, much larger web. And the fact that her daughter Danielle is named after Luke and Jessica's daughter from the comics? The child who, in the comics, grows up to become Captain America in an alternate future? Marvel knows exactly what it's doing by naming her that. They're planting seeds for a generation ahead. Now let's talk about the emotional weight of Danielle's existence. Because this isn't just a comics Easter egg. Having a daughter fundamentally changes Jessica's stakes in this story. Jessica Jones has always been a character defined by her trauma and her self-destructive resilience. The woman who survived the worst, kept it together with whiskey and sarcasm, and refused to let anyone fully in. But you can't be that person when there's a small child looking up at you. You can't be reckless anymore. You can't choose the easy death. And the fact that armed men came to her house where Danielle was, while she was trying to live quietly in a suburb, trying to be just a mother for once, that's the thing that drags her back in. Not ideology, not heroism. Her kid. And that is so deeply, specifically Jessica Jones, that it makes you emotional in a way that surprises you. The moment she and Matt are on that rooftop together, there's this shorthand between them that the show earned back in the Defenders. Two people who don't really do vulnerability, but who recognize it in each other. And when she tells him about the powers, the way Kristen Ritter plays it, just this small flash of something afraid beneath the surface, quickly buried under attitude. It's perfect. Because Jessica doesn't do scared, but she is. Meanwhile, across the city, Karen Paige is having her own reckoning. And this storyline is so good because it's not comfortable. It shouldn't be comfortable. Karen is sitting in a safe house watching Bullseye strapped to a bed, and she is thinking about every person they've lost. Father Londom, Foggy Nelson. And she is doing the math on whether Matt's moral code has actually saved anyone, or whether it's just prolonged the suffering. When Bullseye wakes up and says, "Hello, Karen," in that signature skin-crawling way of his, and she nearly goes through with it. The show doesn't judge her. And that's the most terrifying thing about it. Because Karen isn't wrong, exactly. She's been living in this cycle of violence longer than almost anyone she has watched good people die because Matt refused to cross a line, be killed by conventional means. When Matt returns and asks her what happened to her answer is basically, "I grew up." And she walks out. She's done waiting for the law to work. She goes to the protest, she stands with Angela Del Toro and the people of the city, and she is done being the person who stays behind and waits. The protest scene is worth pausing on because it's doing something politically resonant that the show has been building toward all season. This isn't just background noise. New Yorkers filling the streets outside City Hall, calling out the AVTF, calling out Fisk, calling out the disappearances and the abuses. This is a city that has been quietly terrorized for long enough and is starting to push back. And the show is asking a question it won't answer for you. Who protects people when the institutions meant to protect them become the threat? The vigilante debate the show has been threading all season lands with full weight in this scene. And then Powell, this guy who has been one of the ugliest pieces of the AVEF machinery all season, shoots an innocent agent named Sanders in cold blood in front of witnesses and blames it on vigilantes. And everyone just accepts it because the Kingpin runs this city. And that's the horror. Which brings us to the confrontation between Daredevil and Fisk inside City Hall. And if this isn't one of the best scenes of the entire show, I don't know what is. Matt comes in not with his fists first, but with condolences. He tells Fisk he's sorry about Vanessa. And for just a moment, one heartbeat, you feel something pass between these two men that is almost human. Almost. And then Matt makes his offer. Both of them walk away from New York. Leave the city to heal. Stop the cycle. It's almost the most naively pure thing Matt Murdock has ever proposed. And the fact that part of you wants it to work says everything about how good Charlie Cox is in this role. But Fisk can't, or won't. And when Matt makes the mistake of naming the dead, Foggy, all the people caught in their crossfire, Fisk stops pretending entirely. And what follows is not a fight between a superhero and a supervillain. It's a brutal, grinding, neither of them winning collision between two forces of nature who are both running on grief and pain and will not stop. The show has always understood that Daredevil and Kingpin are mirrors of each other in the most dangerous way, shaped by the same city, driven by the same love of it, utterly unable to coexist in it. And Fisk's line, "What are you going to do? Arrest me? You cannot. Kill me? You will not," is the show just laying out the problem explicitly. There is no clean solution here. Every option is a moral compromise. This might be the biggest clue about where the season is heading. Matt might have to change what he's fighting for. Not cross the line. I don't think the show is going that dark with him, but change the weapon. The Ringer put it perfectly. Maybe it's time for Daredevil to change suits. Matt Murdock, the lawyer, might be more dangerous to Fisk than the man in the red mask. Because Fisk is right. You can't arrest him with the current broken system, and you can't kill him without losing yourself. But you might be able to dismantle him in a courtroom if you're brilliant and relentless enough. And Matt Murdock is both those things. And then the ending. The cliffhanger. Paige, out in the streets with the protesters caught, taken by the AVTF. And if you felt your stomach drop at that, you should, because Paige being in the hands of Powell and his people is not a situation with comfortable outcomes. Karen is the show's moral compass in a lot of ways. Not because she's always right, but because she is always feeling it, always paying the full emotional cost of everything. And putting her in danger right now, when she's already at the edge of her own moral event horizon, when the people she trusted to have a plan clearly don't have a plan that's working. That's the show tightening the screws as hard as they go. 2 episodes left, and here's where I think we're landing. Jessica's powers are going to become critical, not just as a liability, but as the mystery that opens the door to a much bigger story. Luke Cage is somewhere in Charles's operation, and when he comes back, it won't be clean. The protest is going to turn into something bigger, maybe the thing that finally breaks Fisk's hold on the city's narrative. Matt is going to have to choose between the mask and the courtroom. And Karen's going to have to decide once and for all whether she believes in the law anymore. Requiem is a funeral song, but in music, a requiem isn't just mourning. It's also transcendence. It's grief turning into something that reaches toward the future. And that's exactly what this episode is. The death of the old equilibrium, the quiet, terrible sound of everything shifting towards something new. Jessica Jones is back. Wilson Fisk has nothing left to lose. And the city is finally fighting back. I need to know what you think. What's your theory on Jessica's powers? Is it post-childbirth physiology, something the MCU is building wider, or something else entirely? Drop it in the comments. I read every single one. And if you're not already subscribed, now is genuinely the time, because these last 2 episodes are going to be something else. We are so close to the edge. Don't miss it.